Let's do it.
Hi,
Good morning,
everyone.
everybody.
All right, we got everyone in here. All right. So we're going to be doing some more Q&A this week. We sent out our questionnaire form, which anytime if you ever have any question and you think about it, you can find it in the Zoom chat or just ask for it. We just like to kind of accumulate questions there so we can talk about some of those things. So we are going to answer some of those questions today. So I'm going to go ahead and read off the first one we're going to talk about. Oops, hold on. Okay, so what are some things to eat to nourish your body when you don't feel good and need to meet your macro goals? Do one of you guys want to start talking about this one?
I can start talking about it a little bit. I think there's obviously like a broad range of not feeling good, right? So I'm going to kind of approach this question with the general kind of cold, right? That comes home. And I think that I like to kind of take a step back and look at the high level of what's going on, right? Are we talking about just a couple of days? And so it's not really going to have a material impact on your overall progress, whatever your goals are, right? That's kind of why we preach consistency so much, is so that when these things do happen, you can have the flexibility to not have to be pressured or worried about hitting your macros exactly when you're just not feeling great. So I think the first approach to that is, do you need to be worried about hitting all of your macros that day? You know, if you
are you sick, right?
Right. Are you sick? And chances are when you are sick, your body needs those calories to recover. So if you can get in things, I would start with things that are easy to digest. So like broths to help get your protein in. And it's also like very nourishing and comforting. Smoothies are usually pretty appetizing. It's a great way to sneak in vegetables and protein there. And those are more so my go-tos. But really the first step is, okay, like why do I feel the need to pressure, right, to really hit my macros today when I've got a general cold? It's today, maybe tomorrow, and then I can get kind of right back on track. So kind of approaching that with a little bit of an open mind.
Yeah, not having so much. I feel like we tend to have lots of guilt in that situation because it's something that's within our control, but out of our control, you know, and we tend to feel like we should be doing these things or shouldn't we be doing these things. And then we feel guilty that we're not, when we just need to like take care of ourselves and our body in that moment. And like, it's just a few days and it'll be fine. But like, when I'm trying to like, you don't feel good. Now that's like a loose term. Like if we're talking about somebody being sick, we're talking less than 5 days probably, right? But like if you're saying you don't feel good, like you have like depression or constant anxiety, high stress, like a lot of these things can affect your appetite in different ways. And that is where, like, honestly, creating a really good routine and having habits in place that help you to meet your nutrition goals, macro goals, however you want to call them, can be really, really helpful, because then part of that lack of desire to eat is probably coming from your like energy being down and not wanting to make a decision on like thinking about what you have to eat. So having like routines and habits in place that, like, okay, every day when I wake up, I have breakfast, I have an egg and egg whites and cottage cheese and nutritional yeast in there. I have 2 slices of Dave's Killer Toast, and it's just such a routine for me. I could do it with my eyes closed, you know? And I think that when you have those kinds of routines set up for majority of your food for the day, it really, really helps. If you're not doing those things, not in routine, not habits, that's where snacking and like cravings, hunger, like all of those things start to creep up in those instances. So I would encourage you to try to implement small habits and little routines that can help carry you through when you're not feeling well, when stress is really high, when energy is low, when sleep is poor, all of those times when decision making is just overall really hard.
Yeah, I think sometimes too, we get in autopilot, we get in survival mode, especially being moms when we all work and try to work out and stay on our macros. I mean, there's even days sometimes I'm like, I don't even want to deal with thinking about what I'm going to eat. And so you automatically, just what Julie says, start reaching for things that are impulsive, just right there to keep going and snacking on. So having your habits set up and even having just your fridge in your house ready for that, not having your foods that you impulsively reach for around, so you kind of don't have them there. You have to get in the car and you have to drive to the store and you have to get them. Having a couple of sources of protein in your fridge and a couple of sources of starch and fruits and vegetables. So then when you're just kind of on autopilot, what you grab is what you already have available for you, that you've already prepped to meet your goals. So then you don't even have to think about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
And that
Take
I
the
think
decision making out of it.
Yeah.
and that goes back to like the question being like easy proteins, what are easy things to eat? And everybody's easy is different.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's easy is completely different. Especially in terms of like digestion and stuff. One person, like, yes, when you're sick, we always say like, okay, you know, get in plenty of water, get in broth, but like there are certain foods that for some are tolerated really well, and for others aren't tolerated very well. Especially depending on what you're not feeling good means. So, you know, finding things what work best for you, and what you really like enjoy eating, I think is going to be the most helpful.
Everybody still kind of has happy foods too, right? You know, your happy foods that you can still fit in your macros. Like we all love the protein pancakes that we all like to make. Those are happy foods. My clients will have foods at night that they want to eat before they go to sleep, and they kind of look forward to it all day, but it still works and it still fits in their macros because they've built a higher protein, more snack. Those things are easy to grab, but also it's fun to adjust things. Like when you don't feel well, it's like, I don't feel like eating my eggs, so I'm going to have Kodiak pancakes this morning instead. You know, so it's okay to adjust things that you're not typically used to eating. But and still like having it be a treat, like still having it be fun. So those are easy to grab. Like the Kodiaks, I feel like are something huge. That protein pancakes are something that everybody was like, ooh, yeah, I'll totally have those. So,
you know, and
those there too.
And talking about like ways to meet your macros, one way that I tend to eat that is like just some research that I've read about like food relationship and stuff. It's kind of controversial or contradictory to like what I've read, is I eat in terms of like what I enjoy most. For example, talking about Kodiak pancakes, I had one this morning for breakfast. And when I have that, I like whipped cream on top. So instead of having like my whole egg with my egg whites, I just substitute out egg whites instead of the whole egg. So then I save 5 grams of fat there because I have additional fat coming in from the whipped cream that I sprayed on top of my pancake. So I eat all of my egg whites and then I eat my pancake because I enjoy it. And I have it like tracked within my day. I know how it fits into my day. I've eaten it in the past. I know that I feel satisfied after I eat it. And I think that way of that recommendation with intuitive eating, like eat what you love first, is so that people don't overeat in a situation. But when you're tracking everything that you're eating, I think you have way more control over all of that. And that's how I love to eat. And I do it every meal that I have. Like my last bite is the thing that I enjoy most in my bowl or plate or whatever.
It's funny, my kids do that intuitively, right?
Really?
And I always think it's funny, right? Because usually the kids go after the good thing first. But for some reason, my daughter, she's like, I'm gonna go after this first so I can save the best for last.
Yep. That's how I am. Yep.
Did we talk? No, I was just thinking, did we talk about, because I didn't listen because my son was like this in the car, but and just thinking about like the whole picture, and we talked a little bit about, I think, like when you are sick, if you're sick, like most times it's not for a long time, it's for a few days, maybe just a couple days, maybe it's a week, but it's not, you know, for a very long period of time. And then we also then have to look, what would benefit us is to look at the big picture. Is it necessary for me to stress about not being able to get in all of my micronutrients, all of my calories these few days or this week? Or is that just something, is that energy that I'm using for that stress, is that energy I could use for healing instead? And if you then think about what will the impact be of these few days where my food intake looks different, is it going to impact me 3 months from now, like in my results, or is it not? Like, I think if you can ask yourself that question, you can save yourself a lot of stress and mind activity that, you know, that evolves that, because most times it's not gonna affect anything. And especially not if you are working with a coach one-on-one and you have that support system. Of course, let your coach know that this is kind of stressing me out, because oftentimes we hear that, oh, I was in such a good role, like, and now I kind of feel like I'm lost everything. Like, that's not the case. You lost your rhythm, but that doesn't mean that you can't get into that rhythm again. And I think you can always look at that as, okay, what can I use these few days for? What are my go-tos when I'm not feeling my best? Like, what do I usually pick? So then you can always learn something from that, and then you make some small changes maybe based off that, like Casey mentioned, some, you know, good, quick, easy things to be able to get in, but still maybe eat your white bread if that's the only thing you are longing for example. And just know that rest and sleep and water intake, like, is just going to give you so much. Like, if you can focus on that, it doesn't really matter what you're eating those days, as long as this is not something that is going on for a couple of months. But if it's going on for a couple of months, then we're talking about something bigger, or maybe there's a mental issue and then if that's the case, that is what we should focus on, not necessarily your macros. Like, why is this, you know? So I think always going to, like I always say it, but like always going to like the root, like what is the problem really? And is there a problem? Before you start worrying too much about having a problem that maybe is not there.
You hit it on the head. Like, unless it's a chronic problem, you know, it's not something that's really going to impact your results much. If one night out of the week you get to the end of the night and it's 9:30 p.m. and you have like 30 grams of protein left, you don't need to stand in front of your fridge and suck down a bunch of chicken breasts. Go to bed, start your next day over, and just know, like, okay, like, this happened because of X, Y, and Z. It's fine. Like, it's not sustainable to think that you can do that on a regular basis, especially if it's just like occasionally. And thinking about this question out of context and just from experience with clients, I think that what most people mean in this situation when they're not feeling well, it's typically protein. Like, usually that's the culprit that you can't get in or don't want to get in, or you have a low appetite for, because carbohydrates are easier to digest. And those tend to be the kinds of foods that we turn to when we're sick, things like crackers, things that start digesting. We have digestive enzymes for carbohydrates in our salivary glands. It's the only macronutrient that starts to digest in our mouth. So it is the easiest food to digest and easiest to sit on the stomach, where having something that is higher protein can feel really heavy, and can be very unappetizing occasionally, depending on what you have going on.
And those carbs give you a lot of energy as well. So maybe maybe there's a reason for why you want those, because maybe you need that extra energy right now.
Right. And I think easy is the key. Like, the question was about easy ways to get it in. It's what's easy for you, what's enjoyable for you, what do you like to have? You know, I think just thinking about like when I'm sick and stuff, usually like a protein shake. I like cottage cheese, peanut butter toast, though peanut butter in my eyes is more of a fat source than anything, but that's always something that is enjoyable for me. And oatmeal, like, those are things that tend to digest well for me and I enjoy.
The other thing, Julie, that I tell my clients often, because I feel like everyone's getting sick these days, is that it's okay in the short term to change your expectations of what you're going to do, to change your priorities. Like that's, I think it's often like really hard on us women because we want to perform at such a high level, but it's okay if those priorities change for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's about like giving yourself grace, and just be real with what's happening in the moment. Like, and that is also something that I say time and time again, like you have to live in reality. Like it doesn't matter how you want it to be. If it's not that way, that's how we will have to, you have to base our actions off of how it actually is, not what we want it to be. And the sooner we can do that, the sooner our body is going to be, balanced as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You'll do more damage than good training and being in a deficit when you're sick. So just take it off.
Yeah. Let's talk about that next question, just leading into that, Autumn. So recovery tips for those getting started. I think that is a good question to answer. So people that are just getting started, I'm assuming like with exercise and stuff, recovery. So probably muscle soreness and probably fatigue, right? Just tired. You're tired and need, number one, more sleep. You definitely are going to need more sleep. That's when you recover. And that's the first thing I would say before you're like adding in, like, I mean, we'll talk about lots of things that you can do, but like that should be your first priority is like, okay, I need to get to bed a little bit sooner. I need to get more rest.
And stay in overly hydrated, because most of the time when you're starting a new training, anything, you're coming in, you're probably a little bit underhydrated. So making sure you stay hydrated is number one, I think, too, with recovery and sleep. And just watching your volume before you jump into anything, because that's going to help with recovery as well. Just not overtraining from the start.
I'm thinking also, like, if you're new, that could mean that the time that you are now using on training is time you have used on something else before. And then the question is, what did you use that time for before? Because starting, like changing our whole schedule, that's stressful. So if that time was used for either sleep, for sitting in the sofa, for sitting in the car, for reading a book, I don't know, whatever, like this is now time that are active, and you have like in your calendar, okay, when can I fit it in? I'm fitting it in there. So just that stressor of you changing up your whole schedule to make workout fit in to your lifestyle, I think just having that awareness that, that's stressful until, like all habits, new habits are like, until a new habit is in place, it's going to take up more of your energy and your focus. So just being aware of that and understanding that, okay, I need also rest and extra sleep, because of that, not just the training in itself, but the change in your schedule.
Mentally draining.
Yeah. And that your focusing is going towards your body. And then on top of that, your body is now like, hey, what's going on here? Like you're using your muscles in a way that you haven't done maybe ever, or not in a long time, or, so I think just having that in mind as well, that stress on the body, all forms of stress needs recovery. So just because I think that many times when we start something new, we want to go all in, and like we're going from 0 to 6 days a week, and but I don't have time for mobility. So let's just dig in, and then we don't rest, like we sleep less, maybe perhaps instead. Like, so just, I think starting out slowly, feeling how your body is reacting to this, expecting that maybe like, oh, I might see a bump up on the scale because my muscles are sore, I'm holding on to more water. Like, just be aware of what it actually means, making that lifestyle change, and what it means for your muscles, and both mentally and for your body.
Yeah, and I think what Autumn touched on too, in terms of decreasing volume or just starting a new program, not going 100%. I mean, volume can be, completing 2 out of 3 days a week on a program. Volume can also be not pushing the weight. So maybe you're working at like a 5 or 6 out of 10 in terms of your RPE rather than like a 7 or an 8. Watching your volume and intensity could just be actually reducing the reps in some of the sets, right? So like on our programming on the accessory sets, maybe just doing 1 or 2 of the accessory sets instead of 3. So lots of different ways to move around the workouts, and then just being a slow progression, being in touch and aware of how you're feeling. Like, how am I feeling this week? Like, do I think I could push it a little bit next week? Okay, great. And then being patient with yourself and allowing you to ramp up that relative volume. The other thing that I tell my clients often is to not underestimate the power of like restorative movement when it comes to having a really sore body. So our instincts when we're super sore is to not want to move, right? It's just like sit on the couch. And that's actually kind of counterproductive to feeling better. So I always tell my clients, I'm like, get out on a walk, try moving your body in a very gentle way, break up some of the lactic acid buildup that's making you sore. And I promise you at the end of that workout, you're actually going to feel a little bit better having broken that up and moving a little bit than just kind of sitting still.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anything
so
else about
then,
recovery?
Stay hydrated, get in also enough protein so that your muscles are able to be built back up with the rest and the protein intake, enough food in general, get enough sleep, and rest. Like, just I think all of those things are important for recovery. And then just knowing that starting out 5 or 6 days a week is not going to take you sooner to your goal than starting out 3 days a week, for example. Like, it's not a race. You're not going to get quicker results. You're just more likely to get injured or just feel like this is not sustainable for me and then quit. Or so I think always like starting out slow and then knowing that you have the capacity to up your game, so to speak, and add on. Like, that's a much better winning approach than go all out from start. And I think why we do go all out to start is because we think that we're going to get results quicker. I think that's just an automatic thought that is connected to that action. And like, that's most times not the case, I would say. I don't know if you agree, girls.
Yeah. And talking about just protein and properly feeding, another one of the questions was about protein ideas for breakfast. And I will say, like, having my protein like front loaded, I mean, I pretty much distribute it fairly evenly throughout the day, but my breakfast is always 40 to 50 grams of protein, no matter what breakfast I have. And part of that is just going to be getting used to like what you enjoy to do, but like any way you throw it, 40 to 50 grams of protein at breakfast is going to be especially if you're getting it from food sources, is going to be a solid breakfast. So if you're not a breakfast eater, that's where it might be a little bit problemsome. And I feel like I've talked about what I eat for breakfast a lot in the past.
I was just about to say, Julie, why don't you revisit that? Let us know what your kind of maybe like 2 go-tos are.
I literally eat like, I don't know, 5 or 6 different things depending on what my tastes are, but it's usually eggs, whether a combination of whole eggs, egg whites, cottage cheese. I do 2 slices of Dave's Killer Bread, and that's my carb, or I'll do a Kodiak pancake, or I'll do like Better Oats oatmeal with blueberries, or I'll do oatmeal with blueberries and peanut butter. And if I do that, I do like egg whites. So sometimes I'll do just egg whites. Sometimes I do whole eggs. Just kind of depends on where my fats are coming from in that meal. And those are like, that's kind of my rotation. Like, I do one of those. Like, sometimes I'll eat the same thing every morning for like 4 days, and then I do something different. But I always like to talk about, when I talk about breakfast with people that are like, I'm just not a big breakfast eater, Like it doesn't need to sound like breakfast. It doesn't have to be eggs. If you don't like eggs, you could have a turkey sandwich for breakfast. That doesn't it doesn't have to look like a breakfast food. We've created breakfast foods, you know.
It's actually something I feel here in the States that are very different from
Oh,
Norway, where I'm
yeah.
from. Like here, when I see people have a plate with like beef and rice for breakfast, I'm like, that's not breakfast. But of course, anything is allowed. Like there's no rules. It's just like, I'm like, that's weird
That's
to
funny.
me. But yeah, it fills you up. So
do you guys want to share like what you typically eat breakfast, like what your proteins are?
Yeah,
go
ahead, Autumn.
You want me to go?
So my typical breakfast lately, I do slow cut oats, and I use a mixture of egg whites and water to cook them in. I don't really taste the egg whites, and it's just a bump in protein. It's great, and I do that with a little bit of cinnamon and berries. I definitely like eating breakfast, but I during the week am not a huge breakfast eater. I'm not often that hungry, but I make sure to always get that in. So breakfast isn't usually much bigger than that for me. But another tip that I like to give my clients, things that people don't always realize, is something that can be either like no prep or very low pre-prep. Sundays we do like a family brunch, and we batch cooks. We make a lot more and save it for the week. And those are like the Kodiak pancakes, and it's also turkey bacon. So we just make a lot of it, and it actually holds pretty well in the fridge. So it's super easy to open the fridge and pull out a couple of pieces of turkey bacon. Boom, you've already got some protein. The other thing that I really like is some sort of like smoked salmon. I happen to buy mine at Costco because the stuff can be, I would say, relatively expensive otherwise. But great source of protein, omega-3 fatty acids. And again, it's about opening the package, boom, right? You're ready to eat it. It's kind of no prep, no fuss in the morning, something very quick, but protein forward.
Yeah. Want me to go?
Yeah. I feel like I share my breakfast every day on
I know.
media.
I'm a big breakfast fan. I don't ever have issues getting breakfast in, but I think the most important thing is like, if you know your morning, and it's kind of a mental state too. Like if you know your morning's going to be rushed and you know you're not going to have time the night before, it takes 2 seconds to prep something. I mean, there's a lot of times that I do a combination of whole eggs and egg whites, 150 ounces of egg whites, 1 egg, put some 15 grams of mozzarella cheese on it, and have it ready the night before in a baggie. I'm really big with sourdough bread. So I love sourdough bread with toast. I don't do the oatmeal a lot anymore. I used to do the oatmeal, but I'm a big fan of vanilla Greek yogurt, a little bit of granola, and a lot of berries on it, because that goes down really well. I'll prep that the night before and take it with me in the car and eat it. So it's kind of, for me, it's something simple because I'm eating it most of the time while I'm in my car. So something that I can grab and reheat in 2 seconds, but it literally takes like 2 seconds the night before to prep it. Or overnight oats. Those are really good too for some of my clients. Like put some water in a jar, put your oatmeal in a jar, add some nut butters in there, add your proteins in there, mix it up, have it sit overnight. All you have to do is unscrew the lid in the morning, take a spoon with you in the car and eat it in the car. And then voila. So I'm not a big drink fan, a protein drink fan in the morning. I really like food, because if I do that, then mentally I'm like, oh, by the time it hits 11 o'clock, if I have this 400 calorie protein shake, by the time it hits 11 o'clock, I'm starving, because it's like I haven't eaten food. So I really like to stick to whole foods in the morning. Super fast.
Same here.
Yeah.
I agree that like couple of minutes, I shared on Instagram, a couple of minutes at night, the night before, just doing a little bit of prep. I do a combination of whole eggs and egg whites. So I put those in a jar. I add some garlic salt in there, garlic granules, sometimes some onion powder, and I shake it up, scramble it, whatever, and put it in the fridge. So then the next morning, all I have to do is spray my pan and pour it in. And I don't have to crack any eggs. I don't have to measure any of that. It's like ready to go. And honestly, that couple of seconds that it takes to do that at night makes a huge difference in the morning.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah.
What do you eat, Henrietta?
Yeah, so I was thinking like salmon. It took me back to London. When I lived in London, I always had smoked salmon and scrambled eggs, avocado, and fruit. Like that was my everyday breakfast, because I ate breakfast in the gym, because there was a big restaurant there. So I bought it. I didn't make it myself. So that was like, yay. But now here, my typical breakfast is vanilla yogurt with cereal and berries. So I start my day with take a cup of coffee on my way to leaving my first son, take a bottle of water with electrolytes, leaving my 2 other kids, and then I come home and eat breakfast. And then I'm often, really hungry. That's like 9 a.m. ish. But if I need something to fill me up for longer, I choose something else, because the yogurt because it's a lot of it's protein and it's mostly just fiber. So it doesn't, I feel like I get hungry quite, that maybe sounds
It
weird,
digests faster.
but I feel like, I need, so if I need something to hold me long, for example, for a day where I have a lot of Zoom meetings, then I would have scrambled eggs, always use 1 egg whites. And then, like you can see on the plate today on the Hungry Fitness page, I use like baby spinach, like bell pepper is my go-to for all, whatever meal it is. And either smoked salmon or prosciutto. I'll always have prosciutto and salami in my fridge as well. So depending on what I have, turkey deli is something I always have, just like something that I both really love, enjoy, and that are high in protein, that I don't need to I don't like to make food. I like to just take food on my plate. So
just put it together.
Make sure that I have those things at home. So yeah, for sure. So, and it depends a little bit. I think it's good to have a couple of options, breakfast stuff, so you can see for the day, what do I feel like eating today? And also depending on how does my day look. So for sure.
Awesome. Well, great. I hope everyone got some good ideas on the call today. We love the questions. Keep them coming. Don't be afraid to re-ask questions, or if you're new, asking something that you feel like is simple or whatever. We love to educate and talk about all that stuff. So keep the questions coming. I hope you guys have an awesome day, and thanks for joining us.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.